The Amur River at Heilong Jiang, Chinese, pinyin, Heilong Jiang, Black Dragon River, Manchu. Möllendorff, Sahaliyan Ula, Abkai. Sahaliyan Ula, Blackwater, is the world's 10th longest river, forming the border between the Russian Far East and northeastern China. The largest fish species in the Amur is the kaluga, attaining a length as great as 5.6 meters. Name. The name of Amur is originated by native Asian. Water means mul in Korean, means murin in Mongolian, means mizu in Japanese. In the past, they called river as water, so Amur means a lot of water in native Asian. The Chinese name for the river, Heilong Jiang, means Black Dragon River in Chinese, and its Mongolian name, Kamoron, means Black River. Course. The river rises in the hills of western Manchuria at the confluence of its two major affluents, the Shilka River and the Urgana River, at an elevation of 303 meters. It flows east, forming the border between China and Russia, and slowly makes a great arc to the southeast for about 400 kilometers, receiving many tributaries and passing many small towns. At Fuma, it is joined by a major tributary, the Fuma River. Afterwards it continues to flow south until between the cities of Blagoveshchensk and Haya. It widens significantly as it is joined by the Zaya River, one of its most important tributaries. The Amur arcs to the east and turns southeast again at the confluence with the Buraya River, then does not receive another significant tributary for nearly 250 kilometers before its confluence with its largest tributary, the Songhua River. At Dongjiang, at the confluence with the Songhua, the river turns northeast, now flowing towards Khabarovsk, where it joins the Ushuri River and ceases to define the Russia-China border. Now the river spreads out dramatically into a braided character, flowing north-northeast through a wide valley in eastern Russia, passing Amursk and Komsomolsk-on-Amur. The valley narrows after about 200 kilometers and the river again flows north onto plains at the confluence with the Abkai River. Shortly after, the Amur turns sharply eastern into an estuary at Nikolaevsk-on-Amur, about 20 kilometers downstream of which it flows into the Strait of Tartary. History and context. In many historical references, these two geopolitical entities are known as Outer Manchuria and Inner Manchuria, respectively. The Chinese province of Heilongjiang on the south bank of the river is named after it, as is the Russian Amur Oblast on the north bank. The name Black River was used by the Manchu in the Tang Empire, who regarded this river as sacred. The Amur River is an important symbol of and geopolitical factor in Chinese-Russian relations. The Amur was especially important in the period following the Sino-Soviet political split in the 1960s. For many centuries the Amur Valley was populated by the Tungusic and Mongol people and, near its mouth, by the Niks. For many of them, fishing in the Amur and its tributaries was the main source of the livelihood. Until the 17th century, these people were not known to the Europeans, and little known to the Han Chinese, who sometimes collectively described them as the wild Jurchens. The term Upidasi was used for the Nanes and related groups as well, owing to the traditional clothes made of fish skins. The Mongols, ruling the region as the Yuan dynasty, established a tenuous military presence on the Lower Amur in the 13th–14th centuries. Ruins of a Yuan-era temple have been excavated near the village of Tia. During the Yongle and Shanda eras, the Ming dynasty reached the Amur as well in the drive to establish control over the lands adjacent to the Ming Empire to the northeast, which were later to become known as Manchuria. Expeditions headed by the eunuch Yashiha reached Tia several times between 1411 and the early 1430s, rebuilding the Yongning Temple and obtaining at least the nominal allegiance of the Lower Amur's tribes to the Ming government. Some sources report also a Chinese presence during the same period on the Middle Amur. A fort existed at Hēilong for about 20 years during the Yongle era on the left shore of the Amur downstream from the mouth of the Sahaliyan River. This Ming dynasty Hēilong was located on the opposite bank to the later Hēilong that was relocated during the Qing dynasty. In any event, the Ming presence on the Amur was as short-lived as it was tenuous. Soon after the end of the Yongle era, the Ming dynasty's frontiers retreated to southern Manchuria. Chinese cultural and religious influence such as Chinese New Year, the Chinese God, Chinese motifs like the dragon, spirals, scrolls, and material goods like agriculture, husbandry, heating, iron cooking pots, silk, and cotton spread among the Amur natives like the Udgas, Ulchis, and Manes. Russian Cossack expeditions led by Vasily Polyakov explored the Amur and its tributaries in 1643–44 and 1649–51, respectively. The Cossacks established the fort of Albazin on the Upper Amur, at the site of the former capital of the Solons. At the time, the Manchus were busy with conquering the region, but a few decades later, during the Kangxi era, they turned their attention to the North Manchurian backyard. Hēilong was re-established near the supposed Ming site in about 1683–84, and a military expedition was sent upstream to dislodge the Russians, whose Albazin establishment deprived the Manchu rulers from the tribute of sable pelts that the Solons and Dors of the area would supply. Otherwise, Albazin fell during a short military campaign in 1685. The hostilities were concluded in 1689 by the Treaty of Nerchinsk, which left the entire Amur Valley, from the convergence of the Shilka and the Urgana downstream, in Chinese hands. Fedor Swimonov was sent to map the then little explored area of the Amur in 1757. He mapped the Shilka, which was partly in Chinese territory, but was turned back when he reached its confluence with the Argon. The Russian proselytization of Orthodox Christianity to the indigenous peoples along the Amur River was viewed as a threat by the king. The Amur region remained a relative backwater of the Qing Empire for the next century and a half, with Hēilong being practically the only major town on the river. Russians reappeared on the river in the mid-19th century, forcing the Manchus to yield all lands north of the river to the Russian Empire by the Treaty of Hēilong. Lands east of the Ushuri and the Lower Amur were acquired by Russia as well, by the Convention of Peking. The acquisition of the lands on the Amur and the Ushuri was followed by the migration of Russian settlers to the region and the construction of such cities as Blagoveshchensk and, later, Khabarovsk. Numerous river steamers, built in England, plied the Amur by the late 19th century. Tsar Nicholas II, then Tsarevich, visited Vladivostok and then cruised up the river. Mining dredges were imported from America to work the placer gold of the river. Barge and river traffic was greatly hindered by the Civil War of 1918–22. The Soviet Reds had the Amur flotilla which patrolled the river on sequestered riverboats. In the 1930s and during the war the Japanese had their own flotilla on the river. In 1945 the Soviets again put their own flotilla on the river. The ex-German Yangtze gunboats Vatland and Otter, on Chinese Nationalist Navy service, patrolled the Amur in the 1920s direction, flowing across Northeast Asia for over 4,444 kilometers, from the mountains of northeastern China to the Sea of Okhotsk. It drains a remarkable watershed that includes diverse landscapes of desert, steppe, tundra, and taiga, eventually emptying into the Pacific Ocean through the Strait of Tartary. where the mouth of the river faces the northern end of the island of Sakhalin. The Amur has always been closely associated with the island of Sakhalin at its mouth, and most names for the island, even in the languages of the indigenous peoples of the region, are derived from the name of the river. Sakhalin derives from a Tungusic dialectal form cognate with Manchu Sahaliyan, while Ainu in Japanese Karaputo or Karafuto is derived from the Ainu name of the Amur or its mouth. Anton Chekhov vividly described the Amur River in writings about his journey to Sakhalin Island in 1890. The average annual discharge varies from 6,000 cubic meters per second to 12,000 cubic meters per second, leading to an average 9,819 cubic meters per second of 310 cubic kilometers per year. The maximum runoff measured occurred in October 1951 with 30,700 cubic meters per second, whereas the minimum discharge was recorded in March 1946 with a mere 514 cubic meters per second. Bridges and tunnels. The first permanent bridge across the Amur, the Khabarovsk Bridge, elevation 2,590 meters, was completed in 1916, allowing the trains on the Trans-Siberian Railway to cross the river year-round without using ferries or rail tracks on top of the river ice. In 1941 a railway tunnel was added as well. Later, a combined road and rail bridge over the Amur at Komsomolsk-on-Amur and the road and rail Khabarovsk Bridge were constructed. Valery Solomonovich Gurevich, government vice-chairman of Russia's Jewish Autonomous Oblast, said that China and Russia started construction of the Amur Bridge project at the end of 2007. The bridge will link Nizhneloddonskoye in the Jewish Autonomous Oblast with Tongjiang in Heilong, Jiāng province. The 2,197-meter-long bridge, with an estimated investment of nearly $230 million, is expected to be finished by the end of 2010, Gurevich said. Gurevich said that the proposal to construct a bridge across the river was actually made by Russia, in view of growing cargo transportation demands. The bridge, in the bold estimate, will be finished in 3 years, Gurevich said.